start our regular meeting of council for February 14. I guess a bit delayed, but we can start with opening prayer.
Well, let's pray. Dear God, as council gathers in this place tonight to complete the processes of government to keep this town on a working and growing path, we ask you to be here with them and us tonight. Bestow, God, wisdom, insight, goodwill, and courage upon these leaders of our community. May they see and walk through doors of opportunity opened by your favor towards this community of St. George. As the month passes and upcoming days and weeks are examined, let your Holy Spirit keep and guide them. We place these representatives, this meeting, and the town of St. George in your mighty hands. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we have the agenda. We're going to approval of minutes of previous council meetings. First one is approval of meetings for regular meeting of council January 10, 22.
I
Any-
have to say no to that.
Okay, well, I was about to ask for comments or questions. I was about to do that.
Didn't
But
want to miss
so
it.
comments or questions? Councilor Armstrong.
I'll get the floor. Okay.
Yeah,
The reason that I have to say no for that is that because it's not 100% accurate. In the minutes, it says the price difference between the units is $500.
which page you are? I'm sorry.
Which page am I on? Number 2?
Okay.
And the price of the trial unit was $4,550, and the price of the new unit for Halifax was $3,415, which is a difference of $1,135. But that's not actually what we were talking about. What we had voted on was that the CAO was instructed to purchase a unit, and he was authorized to purchase up to $4,500. And Jason Godet, our CAO, informed us that he could in fact purchase the unit for $3,415. And it was expected that this unit would have been purchased within the week of as the email had stated. The email on December 14th was identified for our information only. And it clearly states that the $3,415 would be honored for the entire week. However, after that, the price would go up $500.
What do you want to change it to?
Well, I just want to say, what I want to change it to is that the price difference between the radar system is not $500. It was
No, I know what you're saying.
1,000, it was 1,100, and we were not even talking about 2 different units anyway. We were talking about 1 unit to purchase only.
I have a question. Under the vote on the motion, in favor and opposed, I went back and I checked the YouTube recording, and I'm not positive, but I thought the mayor voted in favor of opposing or voting in favor of the motion and not in opposition. So it would actually be 5-2 instead of 4-3. You remember?
I remember that after I saw the group of 4 voting, I said, what the heck? And I said, no. And I don't remember, but I know, in fact, I was one of the people that I found ridiculous that for $500 we went back on something that would have been so important to actually have. And then I had some explanations that, we're gonna go and get another one from the Service Commission. No, my recollection, Councillor Coulton, is that I saw the 4 people up there voting in favor, and I said, oh, maybe I threw my hands up in in frustration, but because I found it ridiculous that for $500 we went back to this one. So
Yeah,
no,
well,
so I
stand
no,
corrected in the discussion.
thank you, thank you, thank you. With regard to the point that Councillor Armstrong said, I believe, and this is a very minor point, I believe that the reference here is that the particular unit which we had here in St. George change in price. Whether or not that was grounds to actually amend or modify a motion that the council had passed before. At that time, there were not any issues raised with regards to Robert's rules, and I have not looked into it. So I don't see any problem with that, frankly. Do you have any specific wording that you want to change it?
Just the difference between the two radar units was $1,135. That's what it says, the price difference between radar units.
The way that I understand it, based on the motion from Councillor Coulton, was that the price that we were about to buy went up $500. This was how I understood it. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, the motion was based on there was a cost increase to
To the unit that we had here.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
there was
that-
no mention in the
so-
motion of any cost.
So that was the base on which Councillor Coulton brought the motion. On that particular unit that was kind of default, unless Jason had decided not to pursue it, the default unit went up $500. I did not know about that. Somebody learned it and raised the motion. So that's correct. If it refers to the motion, if it refers to the same unit that we had here. If it refers to the same unit that we had here in St. George, because that time we had a unit already on trial, on test.
Okay.
Okay, so that unit apparently went $500, and on the base of that, we said that unit went about $500. Why the CEO did not pursue the other unit, which was cheaper, I don't know. I mean, this is different, but that's correct. This is correct. The price difference between the other units is $500.
So, Your Worship, just on that point that was raised, we will alter the price difference between the radar units is over $500. Would that be fine for the minutes? Just
Yeah, sure.
purpose of record keeping.
Yeah. Any other comment or question about this point, about the agenda of or the meetings of January 10th? Actually, while we are there, and perhaps we should actually capture it, I'm not sure if it has been captured here. There was discussion there, which I don't see it here, that we will be pursuing the request to the Service Commission to get a trailer from them free of charge to actually get data that we can send to the RCMP, and that's an important thing, and it's here. Trailer unit is available, but have we requested, Jason?
So,
Yeah.
just for the point of record keeping, there were 4 points that were made from discussion, so we'll add a fifth. So the town will pursue future use of the mobile trailer.
Correct. And just supplementary question to that one, because I just to follow up on what Jason said, I raised the issue at the Regional Service Commission, and I told them the importance to actually collect data, both for actually know where we are, for the purpose of communicating with the RCMP on where the policing should be focused, and thirdly, for actually be able to defend our reputation with anyone who claims that we are, I guess, lax. So I believe it's something that is still on the radar, if I can use the term. It's a pun, right? It's a pun. Yeah. So I think we are good with this ability. Any other comment or question? I need a motion to to approve these minutes?
I make the motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor? Um, Next one is 2021, yeah. We have a motion, I'm sorry, we have a closed door meeting January 21, that we have the minutes in front of us. And just before we started, I overheard that something is not correct with the minutes.
Kathy wasn't there.
Kathy wasn't there. That sounds like yeah. Questions, comments? Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask, I just wanted to know whether or not Kathy was actually attending the meeting.
She was not.
So is she aware that she was listed?
That was, she was-
Is she aware that she's being listed as attending?
that's an error.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do have something else, though.
go ahead.
The following items that were discussed was listed just as staffing. And I feel that, I believe that that's just a little bit too vague, because we did actually spend quite a bit of time talking about assisting a neighboring community and the challenges that they were facing. But we also made a motion at the end of the meeting, whereby our CAO would go and assess the situation and bring back the information. That motion is not listed on here.
That's correct. It would be captured in,
Should it be captured in here?
not necessarily, because it's regards to the staffing. That's
Okay.
pretty, I guess, sensitive when it comes to
Yeah.
that type of information that's released. So, but we can certainly capture it in there. The motion was made. So I can add the point on the motion.
Okay. Any other question? And I need a motion to approve. All in favor? Closed door meeting February 3rd. Magadevic Place. The following I will discuss. Code of conduct, meeting adjourned. Yeah, any questions on that closed door meeting, February 3rd? Comments, questions for the minutes? No questions or comments. I will ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the Town of St. George closed door meeting for council for code of conduct.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 on the agenda, conflict of interest declarations. Any conflict to be declared? There are no conflicts. General reports, general government report, local government reform update. Actually, to make it different is and local government reform update. Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. So general government report for the month of January, Lower Bridge sewage line installation work. The engineering stamp drawings were submitted to Estherbrook, from Estherbrook Engineering to DTI. We're just awaiting for DTI to come back on the approval of the drawings. And once those drawings are approved, then they will go to the installer. And then we can start looking at starting the work for those lines. For staffing, Joseph Crowe has been hired on a 6-month work term for Public Works. Macadavic Place, Horizon continues use of the building for vaccination clinics with several other community events, some over the next few months, such as a workshop for the Canadian Mental Health. A section of the ceiling was damaged by an unknown roof leak and is being looked at this week. Canal Beach, permits have been received for septic field. Tenders were issued in late 2021 for 2 of the 3 project areas. 2 of those areas, one was for land work, land prep, and the other one was for the building construction. The retaining wall is their remaining holdout or pending right now. The walking trail is part of the Coastal Link Trail. Public tendering for the trail construction is expected to be posted at the end of February. Groundbreaking ceremony is tentatively planned for late April, early May. Capital projects, towns compiling a list of projects, for possible capital projects in 2022. And we hope to meet with council in the coming weeks to review those plans. Riverview water main project application it has been submitted. We've yet to hear anything on this. I'll just continue to update council with that. Hillcrest dip, the town is monitoring a dip in the road on the Hillcrest Avenue, the subdivision, and has erected bump signs, temporary filled the dip with the sand. The area will be excavated and repaired as weather improves. Preliminary work for the municipal plan is underway with the first reading planned in June, open house and formal presentations April and May. For the development and housing, we did receive one proposal for the multi-unit residential RFP. We did have some interest, but only one submission. We are working with that contractor to update his proposal and offer some additional information that was not present at the time of the initial proposal. Industrial park expansion, the town received formal advisement that funding for the preliminary work relating to the new production well and third lagoon, both of those are tied to an industrial park expansion. That preliminary funding was received, approved. We are waiting for final notice that will include percentages of funding. RCMP speed enforcement, the town has been in contact with RCMP on matters relating to speed enforcement, and their traffic enforcement team has been in town several weeks over the last month. Fire department dispatching, installation, training for the new TMR radios and dispatching has been delayed due to some aspects of the pandemic. St. George Fire Department air packs, the town did receive funding from the Farm Credit of Canada for a new air pack for the fire department. Canada Post, the third party representing Canada Post is still looking for proposals for a new location of the post office. MP John Williamson has received correspondence from the town and is seeking further information from Canada Post. For dangerous unsightly properties, there are 2 active files we're being worked on with respects to properties in the town. One file has an outstanding order, while the other is on a timeline for action. Day Adventure Center, much like last year, we'll be holding an open doors day of the Day Adventure Center for those with interest in using the buildings to attend and present their proposals. It appears this day is tended right now for March the 21st. And just a FYI on the Day Adventure Center, the Girl Guides continue to use one of the buildings there. Main Street decorations, winter banners and lights were removed. Annual audit, staff has been working on financials, year ends, in preparation for the auditors who should be arriving in the 1st of March. Black's Harbor, while in earlier requests for administrative staffing assistance was received for Black's Harbor for the interim, they are working through the situation and assistance will be limited by the town at this point. So residents' complaints, certainly this time of the year, we have received a number of complaints regarding plowing and snow removal. So we have also received some regarding non-town plows plowing into the streets. We've done some social media blitz on that. We've received a complaint on some damage for a fence along the road and walking trails not being cleared and snowbanks too high, and of course sidewalks. So we're certainly we'll certainly take the complaints. We use those certainly as feedback, and all residents can contact the town hall or member of council if they wish. And I believe that is it with the general government update.
Questions, comments?
When you say several times, the RCMP speed enforcement, how many is several?
I don't have an exact, it's only as they, twice that they've let me know that they've been in the town.
And in light of, in the residents' complaints, I guess, I have a question around, is there a way that we can solve some of the snow clearing? Like, do we have the opportunity to hire, like subcontract some of it in light of our present situation? No?
It would be we certainly can hire, I guess, what would be the situation?
Not having enough?
So,
do, yeah,
staff, you mean?
yeah.
So with the hire of Mr. Crow, that would put us at where our winter numbers would be. We'd usually
Okay.
typically have one other person for casual. So that is really what the only spot that we probably would have a need. But I mean, as of right now, we're still looking at some casual opportunities.
Okay.
So
So that's been resolved then.
for the most part, yes, yeah. You know, and one thing with outside contractors, there's always the concern, they don't know where lampposts are sometimes. They don't know where, you know, maybe fire hydrants are. You know, they're not really so familiar with where some of the infrastructure is, so.
Okay.
Did we have to hire the outside guys because we had so much snow? I know we had short snow.
We have in the past, like 2015, for example, we brought in outside help with the amount of snow. We will use contractors for snow removal, taking snow off of like some more the you know, densely populated areas of downtown. They'll truck it away. We've got a sort of a snow removal area that we take snow to. So that's usually the extent of what we use a contractor for.
Because that was a freaky storm. We had an awful lot of snow that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta get rid of it. We can't clean it up if we don't get rid of it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's all-
Yeah.
We already have that. Didn't we hire a contractor to take some of the snow away
This
down on
year.
40th Street?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to follow up on 2 points. The first one is with respect to enforcement and the issue of radar. I have raised the issue with the Service Commission about what happens to the data collected by these units. So I confirm that the Service Commission does not keep a database of all the data. And all these data are turned over to RCMP. So I have asked if the RCMP has this data, like when the unit is placed, say, on Mount Pleasant Road for 3 months, when they take the chip from there, you go to a big database, and somehow they keep some statistics on why it is. And I hope to get an answer from that, because that could be useful information for everybody.
Your Worship, just to add to that as well, I've also requested information from the Service Commission just on their trailers into other communities. There's been an issue of I guess, for lack of other words, well, there's they're not fully disclosing the community names. They will use like community A or community B or site C, so they will use those instead. So I'm awaiting that report. So we should probably get something here fairly soon.
So now streets have a privacy? Is that the privacy rights of the street, or what's the reason for that?
Yeah,
That's very
I'm not
curious.
sure what the right term would be for that.
Okay, okay.
Where the information is collected. Maybe it could be as much as another community not wanting to divulge information that will put them at
Looking bad. Yes.
yeah, with St. George. So
I expect that they're going to give us an answer, like the RCMP itself is going to give us an answer, because we put it on the board discussion of the Service Commission, and there was some follow-up. There will be some follow-up. The second thing is for anyone who watched the board meeting, this month's board meeting, the issue of assistance to Blacks Harbor was raised, and I'm thankful actually that somebody was listening. One of the persons that I want to thank is the executive director of the Service Commission, who actually felt very similar like me, and that the government should supporting a community who may be into some difficulty, particularly as we go through this crisis. And I'm happy that something has happened there. I just wonder, Jason, if we're going to discuss a local governance reform update now or later.
We certainly can. I do see it is on for set. Again, another error within my typing. My apologies, but it is under 7A and as well under 7C. So it is coming up here shortly.
Okay. So it's an error. EMO status.
Thank you, Worship. The town EMO remains at level 1 because of the pandemic. The province will return to level 1 next Friday at 11:59. So that's when some of the limitations will be released. We're not quite out of the woods on the winter pandemic directives from the province. Once level 1 goes away, I guess we're back to level 0 or some normalcy there. As of today, there were 3,365 active cases in New Brunswick. That decreased from just even on Friday when that was around 3,600 around. There are 112 hospitalizations as of today, and again, that has decreased from Friday's data from 135. And unfortunately, though, the data did go up was number of deaths in the province shows at 292. And that's the update for the EMO status on COVID.
Apropos, we were talking about earlier. Briefly, what's the difference between now and Friday or Saturday?
The biggest
The big
is
difference.
your bubbles.
And now what?
20.
Then we go to level 1 where it's 50% occupancy for a building like here.
That's as of Saturday or Friday night.
Yeah. So there still will be, for many different public places, there still will be limitations on occupancy until we clear out of the levels altogether.
Question, Lino? C, update on local government reform.
Thank you, Worship. With Council, local government reform. So as of right now, there are 2 committees. There's one, it's a sort of a leaders committee consisting of both the elected officials within the municipality and LSD chairs and at least another LSD rep. So typically there's been two representatives from each of the entities, so the municipalities and the LSDs. Neil Jacobson is the facilitator. His contact information has been shared with council. Several evening conference calls have taken place in the matter of determining council composition. The council members elected by a ward system versus an at-large, or maybe a hybrid model of both a ward system and an at-large. So that's sort of, there's been some discussion on the numbers of those council members. And as of right now, indications show that it shouldn't exceed anywhere from 10 to 11 at the maximum, using larger cities as a comparison. Also discussion on finalizing municipal boundaries. That's even ongoing. That discussion's ongoing this week. There isn't much that we can really alter when it comes to boundaries, but some small alterations of maybe taking in another house, or maybe excluding a house. One matter is certainly around the Diggity Wash Bridge. The early boundary line showed that it went across the Diggity Wash River, and currently right now what's being proposed is bringing back the boundary line of the Diggity Wash River. So those things are still being worked through, and they're being sent up to Mr. Jacobson, and then he's coming back from the province on whether or not they've accepted or declined those changes. So those are really the biggest issues we're having right now is just getting through the composition and the boundaries, and that should be done by the end of this week.
Do you have any questions for Jason? I just want to add to it that there is also a municipal representatives a component in that interface with the facilitator. I am part of it, and Councillor Rubin is also part of it. I attended the discussions about the boundaries and about the representation model that will follow. One thing that struck me, actually two things that struck me, were a decision by the government to essentially keep the debt of each incorporated municipalities with the municipality. And that sounds reasonable, except the cases of operational equipment on which we have debt. We have backhoes, we have trucks, and some of them they're getting paid by the month. And starting the date of the amalgamation, these trucks will belong for use to a larger area, but the smaller area of St. George will continue paying the debt for these trucks or backhoes. The other thing that struck me is how small percentage St. George represents in the new entity. This is not a case of a city taking on more suburbs. It's a case of a town get diluted in a very larger council in which maybe it will have two representatives. And that is something that the St. George citizens should start getting used to it. I don't know how. I mean, we cannot speak for the future, but I cannot visualize yet how a person from Beaver Harbor, maybe like who had all our council was alerted to some incident with a snowplow the weekend, and we had 4 councillors running to CAO trying to find a response. If these things happening in the new reality, how that will play out when only 2 people may actually be involved, and they have to pass on this priority among other things to a CEO. So that is one issue that we should consider, and we should give some input, because one thing that can still play, given the limited number of seats, would it be 9, would it be 11? But it's a very narrow range. And we are what, 6% of the population? We're about 6% of the population in the new entity. So one thing that I would have liked the council to actually give input and inquire about their networks is what kind of representation will fit best for our community in the new world. Do we want to have an at-large model where essentially, if bright individuals from St. George come up, they can actually, we can have like 4 or 5, or a ward system where every little community, whether it's Beaver Harbor or St. Patrick's, who have like 100 houses or less.
We're getting less.
Yeah, has the same weight. So this is something that we have a duty, I believe, to actually put an input as to what we believe is the best for our community. What kind of structure, given the options, because we cannot design what we want. It says, guys, it is between 9 and 11. It can be either wards or at large or a combination. So we should actually try to put our input in. I don't know if Councilor Rubin has any comments.
The only thing I see, we're going to have a counselor on the council. That's it. Decisions are going to be made by everybody else. There's going to be one person in St. George. Definitely one person.
Definitely one person.
Definitely one.
Definitely one person. Yeah.
2, I don't think so.
And, I mean, this is what we have to actually grasp. Normally, bigger cities tend to grow and draw in and communities around them, which under the same city. This is a case of actually one little town getting thrown into a much larger rural community. And what surprised me is essentially the rigor by which small rural communities, like your former community of Back Bay, who wants to have 3 councillors there, or smaller communities like Beaver Harbor, who is like what, 100 houses? Yeah, they also want to have the same, almost the same weight as St. George, and that is difficult to actually process. But we are still discussing. We are still discussing with the facilitator within his parameters to go back and forth, and we'll keep you updating. And I mean, for everyone who's watching, if he wants to contact any of the councillors to bring input to the council from St. George, we are all ears. And we are moving on to fire report. Chief.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, for the month of January, we had 14 incidents. Fairly busy month, not outside of the realm of possible, though that happens from time to time. 5 of them were inside and 9 of them were outside. Wide variety of things occurred. We had some car accidents, alarms, those are normal, chimney fires. While we don't have as many chimney fires now as we used to years ago, they still happen from time to time. We had a couple of station coverages for St. Andrews, a vehicle fire, an ambulance assist. I assisted Charlotte County Ground Search and Rescue, and we had 2 structure fires that were minor in nature. So we were busy. Training. We're busy at that as well. This is the time of year to try and cram in as much training as we can get. We've started a firefighter 1. I'm very active in that as an instructor and coordinator. 28 students this year. That's probably a record for students. That's partially a reflection of doing this online. It's kind of opening it up to more people that couldn't necessarily participate. It's hard for students from Deer Island or Campobello to participate in the course in St. George. So in the past, they would have, they wouldn't have done it, whereas now they are. We also have a student from Dalhousie in the northern part of the province that's joined in with us. So that's occupying a fair bit of time. That's 2 nights a week for the next several months to get that crammed in. Equipment. Slowly but surely, the stuff that we ordered starting back in August, September is trickling in, piece here, piece there. Some of it is going to be out of date before I get it, I think, but anyways, we're getting there. I will say computer. We talked about this computer, it seems like forever, going back to the former council. We got a computer. It broke down on like day 1. The audio card was bad, so they come down, they fix the audio, worked for about 3 days. The video went bad. They come back down, fix the video. We come in my office last Friday, showed me the camera's working. That's great. I put it up in my backpack. I come home this weekend to work on it. It's dead. It won't power up. It won't do anything. I'm going to drive over it with a truck here real quick. Just so you know, it's not a minor inconvenience. I do my instructing for these 28 students. I've lost contact with them. I had to go in today and create a new email group on my St. Stephen computer so I could send them out messages. I have no St. George email. I've got the income tax forms out for the firefighters. I do payroll. I've got FERS reports that have to go into the fire marshal's office, council reports. I need it. So I don't know what we're gonna do, but it's been a real pain in the arse, for lack of a better description. But we're working on that. As I mentioned, in my report, COVID kind of restricts what's going on around the hall. But that's gonna hopefully start changing here soon. We've got some training to do with respect to the regional fire dispatch. That timeline was a little bit wacky. We've got to get equipment installed in the trucks. We've got to get training done, and then we've got to do the switch over. And we're trying to coordinate that with the town timeline in St. Stephen as well, because St. Stephen can't switch over until St. George is gone. So in the next few weeks, I'm hoping to see some technicians come in and get our equipment in place so that we can do our training and move on. If the equipment doesn't come, then I'll hold them off. I'm refusing to do training until the equipment's in place. The other part of that is I didn't want to train while we had active cases within the fire department, and it only makes sense to keep the firefighters apart as much as possible. So hopefully, in the next 10 days or so, COVID will continue to settle down, and we'll be able to do that. Last thing I mentioned in my notes here, just some general statements on local governance reform. I, like everybody, are just kind of watching to see what's happening. I know that fire service is part of it, but it's not part of it, depending on who you talk to. They're saying that it can wait until the new officials are elected and whatnot. And I struggle to, I'm sure there are answers, but if there are answers to some of these questions, why won't they give us the answers? Like, for instance, on January 1, we have an LSD fire truck in Bonnie River. If I need fuel in it, are the credit cards that Darren McCabe's office currently has to put fuel in it gonna function? I don't know, can't really get an answer on that, right? What kind of a structure are we gonna, have? There are different scenarios, and there are ways to move forward, but I don't see how it can wait. At least some kind of discussion between now and then has to happen, but I'm told probably won't happen. So I've seen the timeline as far as the transition, and there's no mention in there whatsoever of fire service. So it seems like they don't plan to talk about it, but I don't know, maybe you guys have more insight than I do. On that note, I have been discussing it with the local chiefs in this end of the county. We have some ideas. We're going to meet again here soon and talk them over. So if somebody does decide to come and talk to us, we know what we think we should happen, and we'll see where it goes. But again, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, what happens. Because there are 3 fire departments within the new entity, and well, possibly even 4, depending on how far you go. And there's another island just across that's saying, how come we're left out? Our mutual aid partners are all part of this new entity, and they're looking in, thinking maybe we should be part of that. And that's something we can talk about with fire service down the road. Outside, what the rural entity wants and needs, but what's going on within the new entity, I think we need to answer a few questions before January 1. Otherwise, if I have a fire or we have a large fire, somebody's going to be getting calls. What are we doing? That's all I've got to say.
Questions?
I have a question about that computer.
Mhm.
Was it purchased and was it brand new?
Yeah, it's brand new.
Okay, and what's the warranty? Aha, take the fire truck and back over. and go get
I
a new
don't
one.
know, but I'll say this, that they've probably got about $2,000 in protection right now. There's a-
And it's
there's a
still
guy
not,
coming
and it's
up
still
and
not working.
It's, it won't even power up now. Like, I can't get it to turn on, I can't do, it's dead.
So why would they give you a brand new one?
Well, we asked for that. The Marquis suggested that somewhere along the line, but they're not. don't know, at some point they'll have to do that, I guess, but and that's great, but I've transferred the information onto a hard drive from the old one, lost that when it failed. Thankfully, I had most of my stuff on a personal hard drive, transferred it over, lost it when they come in and put a new hard drive in, transferred it back onto the new one, lost it again, transferred it back on. I've got hours and days and, time that I should have been spending on all these things that I need to do that are falling behind. I mean, my first report's I'm 4 months
Is this a
behind.
company out of St. John that's supposed to be helping you? Or you don't know where they're,
You're asking the wrong person on that.
no,
It's the
Well, that's what I'm
company that
saying.
we bought it from is responsible for getting it.
what is the brand name?
I've mentioned brand names before and had lawyers come after me, so I'm not gonna do
Oh,
that. but-
okay. No,
I
I
have,
just,
I have two questions. But they're not related with the brand name of the laptop. When we started talking with the province about the amalgamation, the first thing that I turn on to our CAO is that he should have a discussion with you, because fire is one of the big fire protection is one of the big components where we're supposed to get efficiencies and okay, that is the thing. I understand it's a hot potato because somewhere close to St. Stephen try to do something and I hear a small revolution is brewing there. But I think that is very helpful. It will be very helpful if you have that chat with Jason.
Yeah.
If you have that chat with Jason and convey St. George's take on fire protection in the new world. I know that you have a good working relationship with the other fire departments, so that's very positive. So giving that thing to Jason, I believe that it will be helpful. So I will encourage both of you to get together and have that chat. Okay. The second thing that I want to have it has nothing to do with amalgamation. You mentioned about the fire that happened, and I don't want to get into specifics. There were two fires, one fire that I noticed it because it woke me up. And I want to ask you, when events like that happen, is there any investigation through which we can learn? Because I have similar equipment in my property, in my business, and if there is something, and possibly we are sharing suppliers with okay. So, is there any component from the province, public safety, that looks after what happened and gives you lessons that you can pass to me, the owner, business owner in St. George, that maybe I should be aware of that and look at it? I know I'm going around and smelling things, but
yeah, well, every fire, we at the local level, one of our missions is to determine cause. If we're unable to do that, we can reach out to the fire marshal's office, and there are certain criteria: injuries, death, dollar value, things like that, suspicion of a crime, things like that. None of those, the dollar figure was there, of course, but there was no suspicion of a crime. It was an accidental fire, really, that had nothing to do with it being an industrial application or anything like that. It was everybody in town saw some flashes and whatnot. That was an industrial in nature, but it was in an industrial park in an area that was away from the other buildings and other structures, and that's why we have industrial parks. So when things like that happen, it's not in the middle of a town, or it's not in the middle of a residential area. I would say, yes, it was looked at. Were there some lessons to be learned? I'm not going to get into that too much because of privacy. It's their business, what went on.
yeah.
But I talked with the officials, and they may make some changes, but really there was no neglect or anything like that. It was just an accident. Okay?
No, the reason for which I'm asking is because I personally have two similar equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, and we may be even sharing the same supplier.
Yeah,
okay, or the same inspector who comes to look at my stuff.
Yeah.
And I live next to them, so I just want to make sure that if there is, that if there is any lesson that I should know and going around and checking, I will learn it.
well, I'll tell you, general that would apply to everything, whether it's your home, your garage, your business.
Yeah,
Things that are plugged in tend to cause fires.
okay,
If they're not plugged in, they won't cause fires.
okay,
So if you got something that's plugged in and you doesn't need to be plugged in, unplug it.
okay,
That's the best bit of advice I
Okay.
can give you.
okay.
Um,
I'll take
And
that.
that's without saying too much,
Yeah, I'll
you
take
know,
I'll
that,
take
that is a
Okay.
lesson for everybody. You know, and I preach that a lot. I preach that to the kids in the school. Something that is not connected to electricity won't catch fire. You know.
Okay.
Whereas if it's plugged in and things have recalls all the time. It could be a coffee maker, it could be an alarm clock, it could be a microwave oven. It could be anything like that. And when they're plugged in, sometimes they catch fire. And sometimes those fires lead to, well, what we saw the other night, and other times not so much, but that's a lesson for everybody. If you're not using it and you can unplug it, unplug it.
Any other question?
I have one. Of the motor vehicle accidents, how many were speed related?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you
How many
that.
were in town?
Yeah,
There's 4, so.
you're gonna make me think about where they were now. I would say 1. I could be wrong on that, but I'm gonna say 1.
Any other question?
Good luck with the computer.
Yeah. I'll manage.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. I guess we are back to Alex. Building and planning report.
I'm gonna go home and unplug everything. Thank you, for that, Sean. Good advice. So I'm gonna give the development officer report tonight. I will a little bit later be talking about the municipal plan background study, but we have finished the draft of that. And that's the basis for what the new municipal plan will be based on. You also provided support in registering a bylaw. With the development incentives bylaw, we gave some perspectives. I believe tonight we'll be finishing up the process for 7 Wallace Street. We just had the public hearing, and I believe 3rd reading is on the agenda. As usual, winter is pretty quiet in terms of development. Not a whole lot happening. We are still doing inspection of 2021 files. And we got lots of questions about new developments, people wanting to do things and directing them to the right place, or maybe starting an application. We have been working on enforcement. 2 letters were sent to property owners who built or structurally altered things without permits. Finally, I don't know how many people were super excited on Friday that StatsCan had released its new census data. I was very excited. I'm sure everybody was. And the town of St. George has increased the population by 4.1%, which is really good to see, because the last census between 2011 and 2016, there was a slight decline, although there's generally St. George has been growing steadily. Just for recent memory, and that's actually all of Charlotte County did see growth, but most of Charlotte County until this census had not seen growth. So it's really good news for the overall county as well as St. George. It does give us information for planning. Unfortunately, the way the census works, you don't get everything at once. So we have to wait another 6 months or so before we actually know how that population is made up, how old people were, whether they're newcomers, long-term residents, all of that interesting demographic information we'll get to later. But that's pretty much it for the development report, and we back up not too long to talk about the municipal plan process and happy to answer any questions, although I'm really just reading Alex's report, so I might not be able to answer them, but I can do my best.
Since I'm mathematically challenged, what's 4.1% increase? What does that make it?
It's 62 people.
Okay.
The other piece of information we have is there's 17 new private dwellings. And I think it went, it was around 15, just a little over 1,500 people, and now it's at 1,570.
1507.
Yeah, 1507, yeah.
I have a question about that.
1,500?
It was 1507, then we're up to
70.
71.
15, yes.
Okay.
Oh, we've gone up to.
Okay.
I have a question about, you mentioned you had to send 2 letters for unapproved
Yeah,
construction. Were inside the town? Or
I don't know. I honestly have no idea.
or it's a general,
I mean, somebody knows, but I don't
in
know.
Charlotte County,
No, this is in town.
No,
Oh, in
were-
town,
The two
in
letters,
town,
yeah, the
okay.
2 letters are
or
here.
in town?
Two
Okay. No,
enforcement.
I just want to actually get a feel about how your calibration, if that was a complaint,
No, they work being done without a proper building permit.
so
So-
like somebody complained about it or there was
No,
a sniffer?
through either bylaw enforcement or through building inspection.
Yeah.
Okay, through building inspection. And what kind of structures these were?
Both residential.
Or they were residential? So it's just like somebody was building a house?
Not to that.
Usually it's an addition,
Yeah,
someone's,
renovations to an existing house.
And renovations to an existing house. So at what point the experts and the planners and the enforcement, at what point they get involved? Like, you know, if somebody decides to actually change the size of his window, you have like an inspector coming in and
Is it an
saying,
egress window?
Yes.
Is it a window in a bedroom? So if it's a window in a bedroom, if it's we call it an egress window, that's an emergency exit. If it's in a bedroom, but if it's a window not in a bedroom, then it's not structured altering it. It's very specific. It has to do with the National Building Code. And honestly, I don't know much about it because I'm not a building inspector, but the way it usually works is either somebody complains, Jason notices something, or our building inspectors, either they're in town for another reason, or they're just, they do go out and look for things. And they'll see somebody building something. They have a pretty good knowledge of, yes, this is, if they see somebody building like a doghouse, that's not a building code structure. They don't care about it. But let's say they see somebody has started framing around a door. So they're building, maybe a new deck or something. It's attached to the house. That's a building code structure. So they'll do, we'll look, check with the other building inspectors in the office. Does anybody know about this? If we have no records of it, then we'll get in touch with the person and say, hey, just, this needs a building permit. We can, and we do try to bring people into compliance. So we'll try and, okay, you built this thing. You still need to apply for the permit. We're going to check and make sure that you built it to code. If you did, great, we can issue the permit. If not, then we have to take part of it apart, make sure it is to code. So that's generally how the process works.
okay, it's an interesting question because I've heard comments from the community of essentially things that normally used to actually be. I mean, you mentioned fire exit. That a resident came to me and actually told me that she felt a bit overwhelmed / frustrated of too much focusing happening on a small thing. And I just want to know, like, so essentially, framing is the operative word, framing.
I mean, the community play. So now it's also.
I mean, if you go to things like say St. Andrews, if you cannot change the siding because it has some other issues like heritage, yes.
Yeah, they have a specific bylaw in certain areas that governs the types
Yeah.
of siding and things like that.
But as we move, say, to the new reality of a larger rural community, a guy in Penfield who actually decides to actually put a garage on his yard, is that something that has to be now more
It depends. I mean, there is a rural plan for Penfield. It doesn't get quite as detailed or in depth as the municipal plan and then the zoning bylaw. We've actually just, I believe the minister any day is going to sign a revised rural plan for Penfield. So there is planning there. There is zoning. It's a lot simpler than what you find in municipalities. But, you know, I know there's a lot of this talk out there with local governance reform. At least I've heard it in St. Stephen, you know, as somebody who's living out St. David's Ridge, they're gonna have to live by St. Stephen's bylaws. No, so it's what we expect is they'll keep their zoning. Maybe the new entity or whatever will be administrating it and enforcing it, but it's gonna be the same rural plan. And I think it's until 2025 when
2027.
new plans for the entire entity have to come into effect. So at least until then, basically they'll keep their own plans. In some cases, like in St. Patrick, there is no rural plan, so they're only dealing with building code. And the building code governs certain things, and there's really no gray areas in building code. Zoning, municipal plans, rural plans, they can be a lot grayer. They can be very specific locally, like with St. Andrews. for example.
Political.
They can be political.
Yes.
Building code should, you know,
Yeah.
all of New Brunswick is using the same building code. It's all under the same Building Code Administration Act. It should be the same everywhere, although historically there's, you know, we certainly find places, but people can, oh, you never need to get a building permit for this. And it's, you know, maybe you did, but it just was never enforced.
Thank you, thank you. Any other question? Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. I'll be back.
Point of privilege, can I step up for 2 minutes?
Well, actually, what time is it? We can take a 5-minute break if everybody wants.
I just stepped up.
Okay. I don't know, just, you have good endurance. Not everybody has it. Water and sewer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Water and wastewater report for the month of January. Average daily water consumption in February was 264,135 imperial gallons for a total of 8,188. Sorry, I need glasses. So yeah, just over 8 million imperial gallons for the year. There was no coliform or E. coli reported. Well levels are good. Well number 4 had a failure of both the soft start, which controls the starting and stopping of the pump. A new one was ordered. A new pump for well 2 has arrived and being installed in the spring. And just remind council that was part of our gas tax top up for 2021 for upgrade updates to well number 2. Staffing was an issue for January as COVID ran through the staff. So we did have one sole employee, as you see there, and he should be congratulated for a
Yes.
job well done, and he's certainly been commended for that, hold the fort down, so to speak. One of the pumps in sewage lift station number 9 on Macadavic Drive will need replacing. This pump has been to the manufacturer 3 times for rebuilds in recent years, and now needs a total refit, which would cost $9,500. A new one, which the dealer recommends, since the old one is no longer available, is $14,000. The station is the one with the styrofoam contamination, which affects the floats controls and the fact that it has to be pumped out, but it does not affect the pumps themselves. So there's no correlation between this pump going. This pump was purchased in 1992, so it has been rebuilt 3 times. So I guess what we're looking for is direction from council on which of the route to take, either rebuilding for the 4th time or now going and spending, about 4,500 on a new pump. So this was, it would be an unbudgeted item, both repairs of that excessiveness and the cost of this pump. So As well, results were added to the report as well for CBODs and BODs for the month of January.
Questions?
Well, it would make sense to buy a new one, wouldn't it? They keep repairing the old one, I would say.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to
Yeah,
buy a new
they're
console, why fix something that's 20 years old or
Exactly.
more?
30.
30,
Yeah,
30, yeah.
It's not a huge difference in price.
I do have a little, it's really more of a clarity. Because I know that last month we talked about the same pump, we talked about the styrofoam. And even though your report states that there was some attempts made to curb the styrofoam situation, that there wasn't a lot of luck, but verbally you had shared that we have a plan and the process is in place. So I guess my question around all this is not really around the pump so much as this, you're saying here that the styrofoam does not affect the pump itself. However, it does affect the controls.
Mhm.
So a few questions. One is, has the screen been installed and are we monitoring the level of styrofoam today?
So as of today, the styrofoam issue is gone,
Is gone?
right?
Okay, so that means that when we put in the $14,000, does that include the new floats and the
Just the pump
the
itself.
controls?
No,
It's
just the
just the
pump.
pump itself. So how much does it normally cost for us to repair the controls? And how-
Controls will be something else for control units, or they'd probably be around 4,000 if we had to replace those. So the only thing that a styrofoam would do, the pump's designed to run continuously or for long periods of time, but one thing it would do is drive up power. So that's usually one of their first indications that, whether it's mostly sewage lift stations, I can go down through the monthly power bill and almost know that there's some sort of an incident going on at that pumping station, just by the power increase. So we just cause it to run continuously longer. But there's no issues with the controls. Controls aren't burnt out. It would just be the pump itself.
Okay, so when we're getting back to the screens, do the screens need to be cleaned?
The screens at the station itself,
The screens that are collecting the styrofoam?
that's inside. That'd be off. That's not us.
That's nothing to do with us, okay.
Last time, when the issue was brought, Jason said that this thing happens primarily when they have to maintain their filters. So essentially, they take the filter out and they bypass.
Yeah.
And then all this
Styrofoam
pebbles
pebbles, yeah.
go into the pumps and they make damage. And I said that one thing that we should actually tell, because as long as they keep the filters there, there should not be anything coming. The problem will happen when they have to actually go and replace a filter, and they still have to run the operation.
So
And
maybe we
the
need
only
a
way to deal with
two-tier
that,
system.
the only thing that they can do with that is they actually commit to actually have a bypass that's going to be filtered, so they can have like essentially, and that is worthwhile to actually go and have that chat with them.
And I guess just to clarify too, this is not just confined to the industrial park. We see this with restaurants in St. George, anywhere that has any deep fryers, they're supposed to be filtering out. We typically will start to know there's some problems. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we find out that there's, that grease has compiled into sewage mains. So, filtering, the private dwelling or the private operations, certainly that's our expectation as they filter properly. We do inspections, ensure that it's done. We will actually go in. Part of our own bylaw allows us to do that. And certainly it's about just having communications. I mean, the incident that happened in Industrial Park, it was, once you talk to the general manager, problem solved itself. We do the same thing with restaurants as well. We'll have issues where, we annually will go and look at sewage mains for blockages. Something's changed and you suddenly go up the line, you find a restaurant that is, no longer filtering and just pouring grease down into the sewage station, sewage main. You have a conversation and certainly those get changed. So we sporadically will try to do sort of inspections to see. And basically all we're trying to do is say filter it. We don't try to get into much more than that. Besides saying filter it, how you do it, we're not overly concerned of how you're doing it as long as it's not coming into our system.
I just want to say that the mayor has sent his thanks to the individual who worked. And actually,
Yes, I heard that.
Councilor de Dorax also added her thanks on that card. And so we are glad that we have people who can actually keep the ball running, while these things are happening.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to purchase the pump. First and a second, so it's on the floor. Are there any questions before I put it to vote? Okay, so all in favor? Transportation report.
Your worship, transportation report for the month of January. Salt and sand use for January was a little over 151 tons. Sand was 45 tons. Snow clearing was sporadic with the largest storm on December the 29th. The largest crease in the road surface occurred on Hillcrest Drive, believed to be frost related, as we've had a lot of rain followed by low temperature. It follows a trench for water and sewer lateral on the south side of the road. We place sand in it for leveling, and we'll top it up as need be. And that was just in relation to the Hillcrest subdivision dip that I spoke to about early. We'll continue to monitor that and watch for any type of further growth. Guardrail on the end of Little Lane has been removed and awaits contractor to replace that. It was damaged back in September. Took out a significant amount of time to get the insurance money to fix that. So there was a vehicle that had damaged the guardrail, and we put a claim through the operator's insurance and finally received funding. The Cove Base was removed from the main hall here, and it was replaced. Some Christmas decoration were taken down, including those at the gazebo, at Gypsy Rest, the gazebo. The remainder will be taken down as weather permits, which has been done as of to date. The 3-ton had a differential lock repaired in January. The 1-ton still needs an exhaust manifold to replace the now 9-year-old 1-ton. The wait time is 1 year for any type of new vehicles at least. So we hired a casual to fill in the 4th spot, as I mentioned earlier, and they've started February the 2nd. And that is the transportation report.
Are we on budget for snow clearing and salting and sanding? Not
So-
over budget?
No, nope.
Oh,
So
good.
far,
Okay.
so good. Yeah. We'll see.
Questions? One thing I want to add is in the next 3 weeks, based on previous experience, we will get a decision from the Department of Transportation on Mount Pleasant,
That's right.
based on
Based on previous years.
on previous years' experience. So that will tell us whether or not we'll be able to do some significant work on Mount Pleasant and the sidewalks. We have one person there who may have an interest in that. And we can move to bills paid and payable. January 31st, 2021, $137,672. Do you want to add anything to what's in here, Jason? Questions?
I've got one. On Fluent Information Management Systems Annual Subscription, $13.80. What's that?
Page?
Talking about fire. Yes, sorry, it's fire department, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I was just curious what it was.
Yep.
Maybe your computer would come in on that. Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
Any other question?
EpiPens.
Epi-
EpiPens,
yes.
St. George Pharmacy.
Yes.
Is it something that you keep? I know what an EpiPen is. I'm just saying, is it something you have to keep in your first aid kits?
Yes, for the macadamia care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Are they renewable?
They expire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew there was an expiry date. I just wondered where they were. That's all.
curiosity.
Nose in, hands out.
In case I need one, I want to know where it is.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Somebody's doing. just gonna put it out.
Well, since we
Okay.
don't have any more questions, I'll want a motion for to approve this bills paid and payable.
I'll make a motion that we move to pay the payables for January 2022.
Seconded,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
New business. Resolution of council on third and final reading in its entirety by bylaw 87, development incentives bylaw. Jason,
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the development incentive. This is the third and final reading, and this final reading is the one that was submitted to the town solicitor and updated with any other additional verbiages, which is very limited. But that has been it.
any questions or comments before we,
I do.
yeah, go ahead.
I noticed on page 7, on the first 2 readings, on the section 6, the grant formula, there's been some changes on that. The town of St. George will apply a formula that gives grant to developers over 10 years for developments eligible under the policy, and where an agreement is entered into by both parties, appendix B, the development incentive grant formula is as follows. So what the new changes are is the town of St. George will apply a formula that gives grants to developers, which grants will be paid out to the developer over 10 years for a period commencing 1 year after the completion of the development. Such grants will be paid only to the development's eligible under this policy, and where an agreement is entered into by both parties, section C, the development incentive grant formula is as follows. So it's quite a big change there
Doesn't change the overall what's being said about any of the charts or the formula itself. It's talking about, when the commencement of this actually takes place, more or less to protect us from ensuring that, that it's known that it's going to be 1 year after.
But it doesn't talk about the 1 year in the first 2 readings.
No, that's right.
That's
That's where the additional is as well, to say that, 1 year after the completion. I guess if anything, it would protect more of the developer, because if they immediately upon the completion of this, if they wish to submit to the town, to try to get some sort of rebate based on the calculation, at that point, their assessment would not be known. So they do have the ability within this now to say up to 1 year, that way there, the property will be reassessed with a new development. Previously, it was sort of open-ended. To say, you could be here, you could be 2 or 3 years, but after 1 year after, this is when it should be taking place. Budgetary wise, we would certainly want to know. We wouldn't want a developer to come in February after the budget's already released and say, I'd like to have this year. We'd want to know at least a year in advance for budgeting purposes for development payout.
Okay, so that's the reason for that change.
The 1 year. Yeah.
Okay, is this the St. Stephen model?
St. Stephen passed similar, yes. Yep.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it was originally done with the Service Commission, did their research on this as well.
the second change is on page 12. And what it does is it changes the affordable rental dwelling. It'd be number, let's see, it would be section C, number, I guess the audit procedures, number 2. It changes it from 15 years to 10.
Yeah, because the life of the incentive
Yes,
is only good for 10 years.
is only good for 10
Yeah,
years and not for,
so-
but even though we passed the first 2 for 15, we can pass
We
the
can,
third
as long
reading.
as before it's the
and-
final, right?
Right,
Yes.
okay,
So the issue along that is, let's say, 15 years out, or 12, 14 years out, they decide that they're gonna take the affordable housing out of there. There's nothing in here that we could come back and say, well, hey, or we need to pull back some development agreements. We can only have any type of, I guess restrictions, or we can only really touch the development for those 10 years that were actually engaged in this incentive. Beyond that, we couldn't withdraw or pull back any incentive at that point.
Mhm.
It's only for the
this is a
10 years.
very complicated, it's very complicated.
Mm,
It's extremely complicated. We're actually going through a process of doing one of these now in St. Stephen. Nobody can figure it out.
mm.
Like seriously, nobody. And just wondered if there's if there's a way to kind of simplify it a little. Or I
We
guess-
have looked at simplifying it, yeah.
We
Yes.
started that,
Unfortunately,
okay.
That was one of the reasons for which actually we postponed one
Okay.
one reading, because we wanted some more. And the best thing to actually understand that Jason made a little calculation based on a $1 million. type
Yes,
of
I saw
investment.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've done some Excel
Yeah.
using a calculator. That's sort of what we'll be using for going forward.
I have one question, and it's more of a qualitative rather than quantitative question. Can this bylaw incentive be used by developers who are coming up with this idea of the glorified dog houses that you see in Fredericton?
For like,
I mean, now they have come to this 170 square foot
Are they like-
micro homes.
Not like tiny houses and
Yeah.
stuff?
I call them dog houses, but
Yeah, no, because I mean, really, this is only looking at, I mean, I'm not sure how you get a multi-unit in a 4 units or more, and that's one of the
Yeah,
stipulations,
it's gotta have 4 units in it.
right?
well, all I'm saying is a guy who's gonna buy 4 dog houses and put them together, would you qualify for that?
No, I wouldn't
No,
qualify
under
because,
what provision he will not qualify?
well, the value on it alone would have to be a certain, I mean, under page 4, there's certain values of 750,000 or 500,000, so.
Okay,
Um,
okay, that's a good point, that's a good
Yeah.
point, because there is a lot of, if you follow the social media, there is a lot of talk about this new model of affordable housing, and I hope we don't have to come to this in St. George.
hopefully not, yeah.
And, yeah,
Will this be honored by the new entity?
Yes, yeah, any agreement you,
St. George not gonna
No.
exist. When this, 3 years from now, when these things are done, somebody else is gonna make this.
we got an answer about this today.
there's an email. We'd still honor those.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
there's still,
Coming in.
So
That's
for
right.
10 years, we are going to be, St. George will be paying a grant or a
incentive,
incentive for the building of a property.
right.
So that money has to be within our budget.
That's
an
right. It would have
adjustment.
to be each year, we'd have to know what's coming, right? That's the reason why we've sort of put that 1-year point in there, because, we wouldn't want to sort of have a developer come to us and, we're
So
not budgeting
essentially,
for it.
on year 1 at $1 million facility, you could essentially get 14,250.
That's right.
Essentially, so 2 million would be 28,000.
Yeah. No, that question that Councilor Ruben was my concern, because I did not want us to get the debt to actually pay the incentive, and somehow we don't,
The incentive comes from the taxes.
from the tax itself.
That are coming
Yes.
into this portion of
Yes,
the
yes,
community.
yes,
So it's
6%.
Yeah.
not incumbent on somebody else.
Yeah, the incentive is not designed to exceed any revenue we would get in from tax revenue from that property, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're kind of, we may not be making any revenue off a new development, for the first few years, but I guess what it brings to the community is, much needed housing, spark of construction, jobs. So, I guess that's sort of the premise around this, is that we are telling developers that we do need the, whether it's rental housing or commercial development, that it is needed in St. George. And we have had a number of developers that have sort of have their files on hold, whether it's with the Service Commission that are sort of waiting for this, because this is sort of sending that message out that yes, St. George, we do need
We're
these
still open for
things
business.
so much that we've had to
Yeah.
put into a bylaw.
Any other question? So I need a motion to pass this resolution for bylaw 87, third reading.
So moved.
So all in favor? Resolution for third and final reading of the bylaw 25B 2201, amendment to the zoning bylaw 25B. We have the hearing completed. We consider the input. Any questions or comments about it? Excellent. A motion.
I'll make the motion that we move the bylaw number 25B 2201.
I'll second it.
All in favor? And now we go back to Alex, municipal one.
So we've been working on the background study for the new municipal plan. Back before we knew a lot of details about local governance reform. And I will mention that. But just a bit of background on background studies. They are legislated by the Community Planning Act. And basically they say for a municipality that's doing a municipal plan, you need studies of the economy, finances, resources, population, land use, transportation, municipal services, and anything else related to present or future economic, social, and physical conditions. So just about everything. But we do try to narrow it down a little bit. And the process we go into for doing a background study is we look at the previous studies, the previous municipal plan. We look at the available statistical information, and at that time, census wise, that was 2016. So it's nice to get some new data, but we still don't know a lot of details. And we'll really have to finish the municipal plan before we get all of those details, but I think we do have a good enough sense of what's going on. Do a lot of mapping. That's one of the best ways to kind of understand geographically what's happening, looking at different types of land use patterns. We had a good discussion with town staff, Jason, Chris, and some other folks to get kind of that internal look. But that's really just the beginning, because we really haven't heard much from council on this. And then we really need to open it up to the rest of the public. And there's going to be some key informant stakeholders, probably some folks in the industrial park, large businesses, some of the institutions in town. So we'll be going through that process as we're drafting the municipal plan. We'll probably also do a survey as well to capture people's opinions who can't come out to an open house, or just would rather engage that way. It's hard to do this type of planning when we know there's all of these big changes coming. And it was interesting to hear the discussion earlier on how representation is probably going to change. One thing to keep in mind regionally is if you look at infrastructure, while population wise St. George is only 6% of the new entity. If you look at infrastructure, water, sewers, roads, a lot of that is in St. George. So in the municipal planning process, we still feel like it's very important to have a municipal plan for, we're kind of calling it the town site, what is now the municipal boundaries, although you might even think of in some ways shrinking that, because you have these large agricultural areas on the edge of town that are worth protecting as agricultural lands. So maybe you actually want that developed area to be even more focused. So the areas that we looked at, and I'm going to go through an 80-page report in about 2 minutes here, but I'm here for questions, and there is a lot of information there. It is very high level, and we need to discuss all this information with the public. Demographics, I already talked about the population growth. In terms of housing, this is such an important area everywhere in the community. We're just having a discussion about the 12 Neighbors Project in Fredericton, where they're doing tiny homes. And that is a particular solution to a particular problem, and might not be appropriate for St. George, but there certainly are needs, and it's great to hear that RFP did have some interest. We're actually, the Service Commission has some funding from the federal government right now, and we're updating a needs study we did in 2020, as well as looking specifically at vulnerable populations. So we'll have a lot more information on specific housing needs and issues. Should have that in June. That's going to give us a lot of information, but we'll have preliminary information about that before, as we're drafting the municipal plan. So when it comes to housing policies, what's the right type of housing? How do you encourage that? That's personally something I care a lot about. So that will be a big focus. Economy and commercial operations. There's a lot of good stuff happening in St. George. The industrial park is, doing well. There's a great retail section on Main Street. There's a couple of opportunities, I think, especially for tourism and water-based tourism, agritourism, things that maybe you're not seeing quite so much right now, but I think there's a lot of opportunities, as well as some areas around the highway for maybe larger format commercial, maybe some type of warehousing. There's land there that the municipality owns that there's opportunities. We're just going through the list here. Environment and climate change, the importance of continuing to adapt and monitor what's happening. We're going to probably seeing increased rainfall. While St. George is not coastal, it is still impacted by coastal patterns. Sea level rise might impact the MAG. There's also the existing floodplain to the north of the town that needs to be taken into consideration as we plan for it. Municipal finances and services. Generally, the town appears to be in a good fiscal position. Everything's going to change with local governance reform, but hopefully there's still good fiscal practices going forward. And the town does have a lot of serviced areas. The water and sewer services do reach most areas of the town. And as the boundaries expand, whether those services should be expanded as well, that's going to be an important question. Best practices are to make sure that if services are expanding, that property tax revenue is paying for those services and the town isn't going into debt to pay for them. Transportation, traffic calming, we heard about speeding tonight, and a lot of the conversation is always on enforcement and making sure the police are doing their job, and that's very important. But there are lots of things that can be done with road design that can help people slow down just by putting more things visually in their way. Active transportation is another important area for recreation, tourism as well. The Coastal Link Trail is an exciting opportunity that's going to be coming through town, and already there's a lot of great assets with the waterfront trail, the marsh. So building on those and maybe having some kind of tourism strategy. There's a lot of energy around that right now. Looking at the industrial park, there's expansion happening there, but there's also opportunity. And so making sure that as expansion happens, it happens in a planned way, and that, if there's infrastructure that's needed, it's being placed appropriately at the right times. Agriculture and resource development, huge growth area, no pun intended. As I already mentioned, you have these agricultural lands and really not just in terms of how they're being used, but if you look at soil maps and classification, some of the best agricultural lands in the county and in the region are in St. George, and a lot of them are zoned for agricultural right now. So moving forward, maybe even protecting those even more, trying to limit residential growth there. Those are some things to think about. recreation and entertainment, I've already touched on active transportation. But again, a huge opportunity is the water systems in and around St. George. You've got the river, you've got the ocean, and you've got Lake Utopia, and there's ways you can connect through all of them. And there's especially where the Day Adventure Center is now, you know, there's I think some attempts at revitalization, and those are great. But again, that's a huge opportunity for the town. You could even think of things like, you know, day marinas and ways to get more boaters into town, onto Main Street, using the shops and stuff. Land use, you know, again, if you think of Main Street, it's a great sort of mixed use area where you've got shops, you've got offices, you've got people living there. It's walkable. That's something that could maybe be expanded throughout town. I've already talked about the agricultural land and maybe trying to limit where urban growth is happening. If you read through the background study, we've identified all of these different areas where you could have industrial growth, which should only happen in the industrial park. You could have agricultural growth, which would happen on the outskirts of town. You could have residential growth, which ideally would be happening in those already built up areas where things are walkable, which does mean densification. And there's other suggestions like that around how you actually plan where different things are happening in the community a little bit more generally than zoning, but in a way that you know, sets clear municipal priorities. So that's everything we covered in the background study, and that will all feed into policies that are in the municipal plan, and eventually that gets down into the zoning bylaw, specifically for land use. So our next steps are we will refine the background study based on your feedback. Because we do want to get this all done before local governance reform really kicks in. We do have a fairly quick timeline. We're aiming for first reading in June, which means doing a formal presentation of the municipal plan in May, which means we really need to start public consultation in the next few months. So the sooner we get council's feedback on the background study, we're going to start drafting municipal plan as soon as possible, because again, there's a lot of work to do in a fairly condensed timeline. We have done work like this before, so it's not our first rodeo, but it's very important when you do this type of work to really understand the local place you're doing the work in, get really good feedback from the public. There's a lot of technology to help with that. But doing things in person too, hopefully COVID will allow us to do that. I think that's about 5 minutes, and that's a lot of information, so I'll stop there. But if there are any questions, I'm here, and we can continue this dialogue, you know, over email, through Jason. We can do working sessions with council. You know, really, however we go from here, we're going to keep on working and get you a really good municipal plan.
Thank you, Alex. That was a very useful introduction. I just want to actually, because you asked the question,
Yeah.
to actually help you meet the schedule that you put forward. I got a tentative schedule
Okay.
also before from the other Alex.
Yep.
And you mentioned, I guess, the milestone of the council giving you feedback.
Yeah.
When you would like to actually have that from this council, to
Well,
actually help you meet this the thing
so
that
we
you-
have the background study that's a good opportunity to say, you know, you've covered a lot here. We have covered a lot, but there's probably things we missed. So if you read through it and you say, hey, you know, you're talking about the industrial park, and actually, you know, there's a great opportunity for a new industrial area over here somewhere or something. I don't know, that might be a terrible example, but things like that. If you have ideas that we've missed, because you've been elected to represent the town, and you know, you intimately know the town in a way that we don't. That's what we would love feedback on right now. And that will help us draft policies. And we have suggestions for policies in the background study. And those are the policies that end up in the municipal plan. So right now is kind of the general, here's the things about town that are really important to know as you make policies for the town. And then we hope to have the municipal plan drafted. We'll probably start in March, and then we'll have actual policies. And so it's important to get feedback on those two, and well, it's a little bit awkward because we don't know who the council is that will be enacting them come a few years down the line, but at least initially, it's going to be you folks. So we need to know, is this something that it's your municipal plan? So,
Yeah.
Then I just have a question.
Yeah.
When can we expect a physical copy?
of the background study,
Yeah.
We can get that.
Yeah.
This week.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll include the background study printed and a copy of that of the current municipal plan too.
Yeah.
Put that together like a council book.
Okay.
yeah, and that's another great thing. If you read through the current municipal plan and,
Yeah.
you say this
Have
is
it here.
yeah, this is a great policy and I've read through it and there are things in there that are really good. And then there are other things that, we've actually, there's something about, ground floor, commercial on Main Street. And that's something that last council, we actually did a zoning amendment around that, because it was a little bit too restrictive and it only needs to be the front of the building on Main Street. It doesn't matter what's happening in the back. So reading through the municipal plan and understanding what the current policies are, and as counselors, what you think works and helps and what you think don't align with the vision of the town anymore because it's 10 years old.
Can I ask you the new models of municipal plans?
Mhm.
Are they very different than the existing one?
Not terribly different. The Community Planning Act says you have to have policies and proposals. And that, generally you end up with certain types of language. So council shall do certain things. Council shall encourage. So the language tends to be fairly standard. The land use map, that's something we want to do a little bit differently. Just because they tend to be second zoning maps and you end up doing a lot of unnecessary administrative things. So we want to focus more on general areas. But having it as policies and proposals, that's something that comes from the Community Planning Act. I have seen from other jurisdictions, you can find, municipal plans that are a lot more reader friendly, I guess, that aren't quite so just text heavy. I've seen other examples and it is, Alex and I talk a lot about how can we make these things better and something that people really own, because there is a lot of times you do a municipal plan, it just sits on a shelf and that's not what anybody wants. So we're definitely open to new ideas. It's just the policies and proposals have to be there.
Well, it's a very important document because, when conflicts arise, you always go to the Bible of,
Yeah.
of the municipality. So I would take it very seriously. I just may have heard it wrongly. You mentioned about an RFP now about housing, micro housing.
Oh, yeah, no, so the town has received an RFP for some land, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not micro housing. I was talking about the Frederick.
Okay, no, because
Just to sort of link the conversation we were having
Yeah,
earlier to this,
yeah.
but no, those are totally.
because
separate.
these are the kinds of things that the community should have a major impact about
Yeah.
input about, about whether or not it's a kind of
Well, and what type of housing is right. So
Yes, yeah.
we're doing our needs study. We'll get a sense from people what type of housing they're
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
But it's also really important for a community to say, these are the types of housing. It should be a conversation. These are the types of housing that are appropriate in our community because, historically, St. George has made decisions about mini homes and said, we're going to have mini homes. They're going to be in a mini home park. That's the decision that was made. That may be the way that St. George wants to continue. And there wouldn't be anything wrong with that, but St. George might also want to say, mini homes are a sort of new model of affordable housing. There may be ways to allow them in other places that don't detract from the character of the community, but that's up to the community to figure those things out. And obviously finding consensus on that can be a bit of a challenge, but that's part of the work that we do.
And that was a good point there too, because that's a great example for St. George where, past municipal plans focused on, mini homes of a certain age. So it had to be a fairly newer mini homes because there were problems at that time with older mini homes coming into the town limits so sort of, that was addressing, I guess, the current environment in St. George. So maybe that has changed. Maybe, this council feels that it should be okay to put a 25-year-old mini home on Brunswick Street on the main street. Wants to reintroduce that. And, it's also important to understand how that came into being. So, there could be other examples of that. Maybe there's members of council that wish to really focus on, accessibility, within commercial properties being a very big and important part of the new plan. So, yeah, it does come back to you guys to sort of take a look through this and say, how do you envision, especially the next 10 years or plus 10 years or whenever I guess it's ratified, for what St. George looks like. So,
And you can also look at some other communities and what they've done for municipal plans. So St. Andrews, that's a municipal plan we worked on. St. Stephen, we had some input into that as well, but there's every municipality has one. They're all a little bit different, and there's I look at them all the time and try and steal policies that I think would work in other places. So that's another good way to engage with it.
Well, we will endeavor to actually give you some, we'll endeavor to actually start the communications very in a few weeks. If you want to actually meet that schedule. So from what I see, what they gave me is in March, which is like in a few weeks, the town should start hosting informal virtual open house meetings. And that's something for Jason to actually put a start on and start inviting input from people. Any question? Thank you again, Alex.
You're very welcome, and that's it
Thank
for
you.
tonight. So I will see you all later.
Yep.
Maybe one of those open houses.
Yeah, we'll go to another one now, which is a policy on vehicle idling policy, 54A 2022. I just want to actually, before to have Jason give us some feedback from the staff on a draft proposal that we made, and then we can actually start open for questions and comments.
So the original, I guess the original vehicle idling policy was brought forth by Council Didarakis. So we did go through that. There was some repetitiveness in it. We cleaned it up and put it into the current draft form that it is. We had some discussions in-house with staff, just talking about especially around the item of 30 seconds or 3 minutes. So that sort of provided both options there. So. But outside of what's currently in the draft state, nothing really more to add.
But don't we already have a policy in place for the idling?
Nothing for the town. There is provincial idling, but
The one that
wouldn't be
suits the
specific to
DTI,
the town. Pardon me?
The DTI policy, which is.
There's a DTI policy, yeah.
And that was, by the way, it was one of the recommendations that came with the ECW, the Eastern Charlotte Waterways.
And on that point,
It
that was one of the two action plans, this and extending more walking trails, which is one thing we are doing. So we have one of the two at this point.
So we have a policy. Before we do not have a policy, and it's better to have a policy than having no policy. I spoke with Councilor Didarakis, and that one was modeled after another municipality. I asked, that's why I asked Jason to actually talk to the staff and see how we can simplify it and what the thing that actually prompted that and was mentioned, it was input from residents who actually saw some examples and they said that's not right. So even having a policy and having Jason to tell to the staff when they hire them, who have a policy and you should not be just leaving the car running while you are doing other stuff. That can be something important, and we have a duty to do it. Do you have any specific questions about the policy that Jason proposed?
I do have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess there's no provision when a town employee uses their own personal vehicle. Does that policy, is a policy like this still is enforced under this policy?
If an employee uses their own
Yes,
vehicle?
for example, I know that Jason puts the town sign on his
Oh,
vehicle
mhm.
and he uses his personal vehicle for town business. During that period of time, does this policy
It would
apply?
in that.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yeah.
what I mean when I
If
say
you're
it.
using, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, outside of that, like other, public
No, if you're out
works.
doing your own thing, that's
Exactly.
fine, but
Yeah.
if you're working for the town during town hours with a town identifier,
Exactly,
you should be enforced.
definitely.
There's no provision for that in here.
No, it'd be mostly case by case. But yes, anything that would be identified as a town or a sponsored vehicle of the town, exactly.
Yeah.
Like how I look at this, like there are existential issues like climate change, which was just brought up by Xander. And then there are real life managing issues. So I think with this policy, the least that we can do is raise awareness.
Yes, that's, yeah, I agree.
How would it, if we were to adopt it, how would it be policed though? How would you, I mean, is it gonna be policed? How do you know that Joe so-and-so has got his vehicle going along for 30 seconds, you know what I mean? It's very hard. thing.
If it's down the lagoon, he's doing it by himself. I mean, we
Right,
really
exactly.
wouldn't. I mean, there are things.
Well,
we
if he's
can-
down at the lagoon
Right.
and Leonard passes, he has an obligation to
That's
say to the guy,
exactly,
hey, guy, you're not supposed to leave in the truck. So
yes, the
Leonard
obligation,
should be part of essentially the enforcement and policing.
yeah, the obligation beyond leadership.
If that thing happens on Main Street or some summer students are cutting the grass and they leave the truck running as it happened before, you may be a resident who is policing. I mean, but having the policy is a big, it is a first step to actually raise awareness.
Well, you can't police without the policy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Just give-
The previous council commit the greenhouse gases by a certain date,
Yes, they did.
restrict them already.
Yes, we did.
To follow the action plans.
Is it around the same time as not?
Around the same time, for the ECW report. Yeah, it was 2017.
2017, but we started working with ECW in 2013.
Yes.
So there's a long history between us and that organization.
One thing that I want to say and applies to some additional discussion that I have with ECW this week is essentially all these studies and all these recommendations do not come free. They come up from money that we pay. And you hear a lot of complaints about carbon tax and all that. So the worst thing that we can do with the carbon tax that we complain is to waste it. So if we spend money for someone to look at something and make some recommendations, we have an obligation to follow up on them. And to me, that is perhaps the most important thing we can take away from introducing a thing like that. So any other question?
So how will it be affected if we adopt this policy and then we become, which we do, become part of Area 53? Are we going to be able to extend it to the whole of Area 53? or-
That's a very good point. And that's a very good point. And I believe that's part of that's part of our leadership in this transition thing. That we say, St. George, and actually I hope Black Harbor, because the Black Harbor gets the lion's share of Eastern Southwest waterways engagement, both in terms of actual money, but also. So, I mean, yeah, we can actually try to get in touch with Black Harbor and say, hey guys, we started this discussion. It is something that everybody talks about. I mean, Alex talked about it. So, we can actually try to push it on to a larger thing. But fundamentally, it will be, the CAO who will actually be looking after these things one way or the other.
And I think that as with any policies, all the policies of the two entities will be brought together and, looked at saying, okay, this is a policy that, we should have adopted into the new entity. If it's not part of that policy grouping, it may be looked at later down the road, where if it is a policy, it'd be looked at probably fairly soon.
But the commitment to reduce greenhouse gases by 30% by 2030 is not unique just to our municipality. There are other municipalities in Charlotte County that also agree to it.
CHAO had the mayor of St. Andrews speaking exactly about that, they recognize it and they are working towards it. So we cannot just let it go. We should be showing that we are on the ball. Any questions, comments more about the policy? And if there are not, I would propose that we actually put it on the floor and have a motion.
I understand what you're doing with the policy, but my question is, how is this going to be enforced? We don't have a bylaw officer per se, just for the town of St. George. And I'm just wondering, how is this policy going to be enforced? That's a question I would like to answer.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess it comes down to, back to, it would be, the onus would be on the leadership. We have policies like an HR policy. We have our own staffing, social media policies. So those would fall under under that. Without a policy like this summer, we could have a student, start a car and idle it and walk away and leave it. And we could say, you shouldn't do that. But with the policy, will give us the ability to say there's something there.
It gives a tool
It
to
gives you
Jason once he
leverage
hires
too.
someone
Yeah.
on the first day to say, we have this policy, and we have an idling vehicle policy. Which is,
well, and the intention, like I said, because I was looking through the report and the idling policy that they provided, it was more so for residential, if I understood.
Right.
And that said, it wasn't enforceable, but it was with the intention of creating awareness
Yeah.
on the issue. So that's the ultimate goal.
But it does ultimately boil down to this, the supervisor's ability to enforce this. If the works department students, for example, are sitting in an air-conditioned truck, or they've got the truck going with the air conditioning while they're off doing their whippersnipping or whatever, and we have a policy in place, it would be the supervisor's role and responsibility to bring that to their attention and stop that.
well, actually, the supervisor should actually, on the first day that they hire them, before he gives them the truck, he says, here are the keys, here is, how you use the four-wheel drive. And by the way, we have a policy.
Orientation should
Policy
take
on
care of
vehicles,
that, for
we should
sure.
let them
Right.
idle. So this is how I see it. This is how I see it as the role of the town, the role of the supervision, the role of the manager to actually. make sure that
When
this
we
works.
brought on the new public works
Yeah.
member, we had a sheet that we went through all the checklists of different policies. And, this would be added into it to say this is the policy that we're covering. Yes, you've received it, you've understood it, and check mark, sign it. So.
Okay, so can I have if there are no questions and there are no any concerns about it, I like to have a motion to actually pass on this policy, a resolution to the council to actually pass on 50 policy 58A 2022 vehicle idling policy. Can I have a motion to that?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Barbara,
Still think so.
your thing? Okay. Let me start from the other side. Brenda,
I have an issue with this. My thing is in the winter time, like now, a night when it could go down to minus 20, 25. We have a major leak or whatever, the guys have the truck running because they need to keep getting in and out to keep warm. Is this policy gonna hurt?
there's an exception for that. There's an
There
excep-
There are
yeah,
exceptions.
There would be
There's
an
an-
exception, I guess, as long as they
Exactly.
maintain,
There's an exception
if
for
they're on the
men.
job site with the with hazard lights indicators going
Yes.
Right.
as part of that job, they would, yes.
Or for emergencies, you know, if there's an emergency, and they
there's
have to actually,
emergency
you know,
vehicles
they're
or-
they're attending to a fire and they need to have the truck running for the radios or whatever.
Yes.
There is an exception for that. I mean, that's common sense. It's not,
Well,
it's a
we
com-
might think it's common.
No, it's
sense,
actually in
but
there.
Somebody else.
At least in the
would
draft, it was in
not.
there,
That's
Jason. I
why.
don't know if you took it out.
No, it's
Yep.
here.
There's
There is
an
an
exception
exception
about
right
the
here.
exception.
So it
There's
is
an
in there.
exception.
You can-
4-2 is a list of exception.
Yes, there are exceptions written in the policy. So,
Same with cooling. If it's like plus 30.
let's see who else may be ready to actually, Sam,
No.
you say Sam, Sam says no. Noted. Councilor Coulton,
Part of me says yes and part of me says no, and I know I have to make a decision.
I think you should vote yes.
What is it?
You have children, right? You have children.
No,
Vote yes.
You don't have children? Oh, you don't have children, okay.
no,
Oh, okay, so we have that into Brenda now. Brenda?
No,
No, Brenda says no. So, Barbara, you have children
I
and
have
grandchildren.
I have
And
grandchildren and
grandchildren,
children, I do,
They-
and
I-
I'm torn, because I'm torn. Go ahead, now, well, these two ladies are on the same.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
RDA, yeah.
they do.
If it makes you feel better, our tax dollars actually paid for.
That's a very good point. That's a
Our-
very,
our
very
tax
good
dollars
point,
paid
because
for-
that issue came about when somebody saw student running a truck, which were paying for the maintenance or for the gas and running there. And it was all right with the policy because we don't have a policy. And now there is a policy on the table and we have two noses. So I think that is enough for someone to get encouraged to have something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
exactly,
that.
yeah. This came from a complaint.
Yes, this came from a complaint.
well, why didn't you say that at the beginning?
We-
This was a complaint.
Oh, sorry. I mean,
We said-
actually,
I
it
did
was
not
actually,
know that.
It was
You should really
conceived out of a
say
No, I'm
stuff
sorry,
before.
I'm sorry. That came from a complaint that I have raised a long time ago, last summer, actually.
Yes,
it was, yeah.
It was last summer, and you know,
It
so
was addressed to.
three councillors.
council, yeah.
Because I do have a problem with running it for hours for the cooling,
Yeah.
and I don't for the heat, because I think it would be very hard.
But
to
the
work.
exemptions are,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
me, the
exactly. I see
exemptions
what
are
you're
fair
saying.
because
Yeah.
if it's plus 27 degrees, then they have the opportunity to go in and cool. And if it's as cool as -5, they have the
Yeah, I
ability to go in and get
appreciate that.
warm.
I read that too. Yeah.
So it's not like you cannot ever idle it.
Mm.
It's like idling it unnecessarily.
So if that will help you, Brenda, that came from a complaint.
Well, thank you for finally filling me in on that, because I felt you should tell people, councillors, that before you put in a policy.
If
that it was a
everybody was
complaint.
reading the emails that I
Well,
have sent
yeah, I'm
out,
still a no.
but you're still a no, although it came from a complaint. Okay, that's
We
very
just
helpful.
need to clarify that not every complaint is results in a policy.
Yeah.
committee too, just
See,
So
that's-
people at home do know that too, so.
She's still around, yeah. So Barbara, the weight of the words on your
The way to
shoulders.
do, well, that's hard, isn't it?
The weight of the words on your shoulders.
In the interest of my children and my grandchildren, then I suppose I should say yes.
And I will salute that. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. And I will vote yes. So we have a policy, an idling policy, which is a step towards reducing our carbon gases. I'm very proud of that. And I should knock the hammer. And we move on to the next one, which is Habitat for Humanity. And Jason had prepared something, but he can still introduce it again.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. So just to review the email sent previously out to council, that we have currently right now, we have an agreement with Habitat for Humanity with a couple properties. Currently, the last agreement gave them until a certain amount of time to complete their project. Of course, with the pandemic, unfortunately, that wasn't really reached, and that was in communication with Habitat for Humanity. That was their reason, certainly to not be able to have their project completed by October 2021. In hindsight, when we developed that project or that agreement in 2020, I think it was in March, pandemic was fairly new. I guess if we would have known everything we know now, We probably would have put it to at least 2022, looking ahead. So really what we're looking at now is to extend the agreement to October 2023. That has, that does meet their wishes of Habitat for Humanity. They do feel that within that time period, they'll be able to address the project. So that is where it's at right now. It's to go from October 2021 to extend the agreement until October 2023.
I just want to add to what Jason said, that the reason for which you have this discussion is because the way that Habitat for Humanity works is they engage with the community college. And the community college does a lot of the prefabrication. They bring it to site, and then community groups like your church or other people can get in there and start helping, and they prepare. And I just want to add, before I open it for other questions, I just want to add that the quality of their homes that they are producing and what's happening to these homes creates an engagement between ownership and the home that makes the whole community feeling good about what has actually been delivered. And we have one example already in St. George where this thing has worked excellently. So I'm looking forward to actually extending that and allowing, I know that there is a delay. Hopefully, I mean, the COVID is going to go away, and next year or the year after, we're going to have perhaps another two homes of Habitat for Humanity there. So I want a motion to essentially approve the extension that has been drafted.
I'll make that motion that we extend the Habitat from October 21 to October 23 year.
Belongs to Bill.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And where are we now? Oh my God, that's a long business. Okay. Summer festival and events. Jason,
Oh,
can you introduce the subject, please?
So we are approaching point where we start looking ahead to the summertime for events, whether that's the typical July weekend events that we have, as well as looking at music events throughout the summer months. So certainly this year, we hope that COVID releases us to have more open events. Wasn't too bad last year. We were able to have some events. But for booking purposes, much the same budget as we did last year. But for booking purposes and looking ahead, it's now the time that we start to do that planning.
Our overall budget for this activities is
Yep. Same.
20K.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 20K.
700 for Canada Day.
And
Usually held on the third weekend of July, and the reason why we've always held it on that weekend is because it doesn't interfere like with St. Stephen's, St. Andrew's, Chocolate Fest and everything. So that's why St. George had theirs always the third weekend of July.
well, that was one of the feedback that I received last year, that we should actually be having some coordination with the other communities, because sometimes on the same week there were two events the same week.
But ours was always that.
Yeah. And
That's why the third week of July was
Always us.
deemed the week years and years ago.
Yeah.
And it's been that way right up until last year, and because of COVID, things got all mixed up.
I think it should go back to be called Family Fun Days, actually.
Yeah,
Which one?
it should be called
I think it
St.
should be
George
called
Family Fun Days.
Days like it used to be.
family.
I think we changed that, didn't we? Didn't we change that?
Yeah,
To
I think-
something?
I
I
think
thought
it
we,
should-
I thought we did.
I thought we should go back to Family Fun
Yeah.
Days.
And those are all important parts of
yeah,
this festival too, because we do promotional and to get printed material. We want to have enough time to get that stuff done and decided upon.
I feel too that since it's this council's last year together, I feel that the council should be able to organize it. We all can do different things.
I think
We can all do it, and then we all have friends that we know that will volunteer to help us. And I just feel that it should be council's last year together. I feel we should put it on together as council not hiring anybody else to do it for us. That's my opinion.
Well, if Councillor Brenda can bring a plan with the specific volunteers who will commit to a schedule to meet the thing, I will not have any objection to that.
We
So,
don't need a schedule. All we need is to agree that it's going to be such and such a name, that it'll be the third week in July. And there's enough of us here that know what to do. I mean, there's 3 of us that aren't working. The other 3 are working. So we just make the plans so that we can meet with those 3 others. And Alexa, you love working with the smaller children. I mean, that's your, that's your thing, is what I'm saying. Brenda likes, she likes to do the memorial things. And me, I have no qualms at all of contacting people for music, things. And my suggestion, and again, I'm just suggesting this, there's, it should be all week long, and there should be something every night of the week. And we can say to the Multicultural Association, you can, do you want to put something on this night? And somebody else put something on that night.
so can we name you as the project manager who will actually give us a plan, like in a month, to actually look and
Sure,
approve?
I'll do it.
That would be good. So,
One of the issues that we faced with the last summer's fest was the fact that we did not have volunteers. That was. like-
Don't you worry about that, darling. I will find the volunteers.
Okay.
I'll dig them up wherever I can if I have to go up to the
Because
cemetery.
that's
and get 'em.
what.
that's,
I-
that
from my
would be a
No,
great,
seriously.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like.
No, I
considering that
just
we had-
feel that we
It
all
was a
do
short
it.
timeline and not volunteers and it
Like
really.
the
messes up.
lanterns, at first, when that first started, that was a memorial for our first responders. And that went over very well with the first responders. It was for any first responder that passed, anything. Then we thought the next year, let's make it for anybody who has lost a loved one with the first responders. And that's how that originally started. And I do have something to say for the mayor to send out an email to me and to all the other counselors saying he didn't give a damn about the lanterns.
You know something?
I was offended by that. Because-
And you're
Let me
entitled to your
finish,
thing.
please.
Yes, yes.
Because to me, that was an insult to any first responders or anyone who's ever lost a loved one that has ever purchased a lantern for that service. And maybe that's not your thing, but I feel very strongly about it. I went to Mrs. Hack. I got all the lantern things for her. So for you to say that, that really hurt because
I'm so
my
sorry.
loved one was one of those ones.
I'm
that
so
every year
sorry.
I buy a
I'm so
lantern
sorry.
for.
Last year's festival, the only thing that you did is you went inside a canoe and you just push a ladder. I worked there every day for 5 weeks. And I just want to say that we need volunteers. We don't have volunteers, but since Nancy is going to take it over, in a month's time, we'll have a plan, we'll have some names, and we can make a decision. And that's the way to go through. And if you need some more counseling about this heart, no, please do not hesitate to actually, we have some support. But the most important thing that I would like to actually add is that in addition to all this grieving, a festival is also a time to enjoy, a time to actually listen to music, to have children play. It's not necessarily a funeral
It's
focused
not a funeral
activity.
thing. It's-
And that-
It's for everybody who's
Correct.
lost someone or everybody who.
No,
Even if you have not
no,
lost someone, but
no,
even there was some
no.
people. Don't.
So can we have a motion? Can we have a motion to actually pursue the proposal that Councillor Colton put forward to actually have a plan?
Need a motion, or you just need, Nancy has agreed to get.
Well, I think we should actually, it's a resolution. We make a resolution here to actually give this responsibility to Nancy to come forward with a proposal. Nancy, how long do you want? Month to month to actually give us something?
Give you something by the middle of next month.
Excellent. So recorded.
That's the Ides of March.
I'm sorry,
Now it's March, okay.
Okay,
Ides of
yeah.
March.
what's the significance of that?
The Ides of March,
Yes,
that's a Shakespeare term.
okay, I'm sorry, I'm not in the.
I was gonna say,
Do you have enough ladders from last year? Do you have enough ladders from last year? We bought a whole bunch.
We have new lanterns.
The
You have
issue,
all
the
the new-
issue with the, if I
No,
may-
we don't want to use those
Yeah, the issue
lanterns
with
again.
with the lanterns,
They were
was
the
there
wrong ones.
it was a manufacturer error.
They
And
they were
manufacturer.
rubbish.
We had a Viking ship fire last year. That's just all we'll say. This
Yeah.
year
As
Brenda's
Counselor
gonna
Allison
look
pointed out-
after it and it's gonna be different.
Councillor Allison pointed out she did receive the ones that were used in the past.
They look like flowers and they won't go up in flames.
All business, we don't have anyone. Good correspondence, always interesting. We have a letter from David Armstrong. I'm sure you read it all. Do you want to make any comment?
No, it's been distributed for council for review. Been addressed to mayor and council.
Let me start from Brenda, if she wants to add anything to that, a comment or the correspondence.
No. I have
Okay.
nothing to say at this time.
Sam?
No, nothing.
Just have one question. Can we ask who are the residents, or if we can't ask the names, how many are there? Because it comes from concerned Riverview Avenue citizens. I would just like to know the number, or like how many, like if it's 10, 15. And there's a couple of things down in through the letter that they're saying we, and I wanted to know who we was. I'm just curious. And it's also saying about the purchasing of the sign and moving it to another location in Riverview Avenue. I would just like some clarification on the letter, that's all.
Okay. Of course, Mr. Armstrong is not here to clarify it. I think one of the things that was coming out of that letter was we made a decision to actually not to purchase one because of cost considerations. And he raised the issue that they are prepared to actually, the community, the local community of Riverview Avenue, to actually purchase one if we commit to actually allow them to install it. And to me, that's the most important thing. Anyways,
Well, then if this speed sign is purchased by the residents of the concerned citizens, it says there that the sign would be placed at the same location as the previous demonstration sign and then moved to another location on Riverview Avenue in 6 months. So does that mean that that sign from the concerned citizens wants to be purchased only for Riverview Avenue and then it's to be moved to another location
on Riverview Avenue.
on Riverview Avenue? And in all honesty, as I mentioned last month, there's more places on Riverview Avenue too. So I do have a problem with us as a council saying, yeah, you can purchase a sign and put it up on Riverview Avenue.
Put it on his own property, he can install it.
Yeah,
Puts it
well-
up on his own property.
So essentially, if they give us a horse, we check it at the teeth and we say,
Pardon, say that again.
they say something, if they give you a horse, you don't check its teeth, you get it. But you say, that it's a concern that they give you a horse. Not,
Yeah.
Barbara.
I have the same concern, that if they put it on their private property, that's nothing to do with the town, but I agree, there are a lot small places in town where there's speeding, where I live, I almost get creamed every day, and Jason's already had a letter about Campbell Hill and South Street, so, I think we're better off doing what we were going to do and get this sign from the RSC, and put it all over the
around
place.
to the various.
It's not
places.
just Riverview Avenue is not the only place that has a speeding problem.
No, it's, yeah.
I understand that David's very vocal about it. That's not, that's fair enough, but I mean, there are other places that have the same problem.
And just to raise as well, it was brought up in last council, previous council to sort of the same similar offer. Issue that we have is residents buying any type of traffic signs. Maybe a speed radar here, but maybe another resident may say, well, look, I want to install flashing amber light. Another resident will say, well, I want to buy an actual speed sign. And I guess if it's been given ahead to another resident to do that, I'm going to install a 30-kilometer speed sign in front of my house. As long as it's somewhat in my property. That's one of the issues we run into this with, granting residents saying, yes, you can install traffic calming or traffic alert type of devices. A device such as a speed sign, if it's not under our jurisdiction, can be altered. I mean, maybe a resident one day could go out and say, well, it's a long weekend. I'm gonna bring the speed limit down on their own will. That does cause a lot of traffic issues. And then there's another liability standpoint for residents installing any type of traffic calming or traffic alerts. If there's an accident, suddenly someone comes along and there's an accident and they say, well, I was distracted by, a traffic device that was installed. They could be brought into liability. So just for the protection of residents, one of the reasons why we've previously never really entertained those. You can look at different stories around Canada or United States where, residents have taken upon themselves to go out and install traffic bumps in the middle of the road, and it's not their right of way. It does cause some traffic concerns. So the only thing for something like this would be we'd receive a donation earmarked
For
donation of
traffic,
funds.
yeah.
And then it would be earmarked for a certain area that we would install, that we'd have control over. That's how you would do something like that. If a resident said, look, I know the speed limit's 50 kilometers on my road, I'd like another sign maybe. If they donated money and then, we
Yeah,
could maybe do
I'm
something
saying
like
like,
that.
if you get a horse, if somebody offers you a horse, you may say, can I have the ownership, for example?
Yeah, maybe instead of the horse, we'll take the value of the horse and buy our own horse and.
But buy the horse.
Yes.
Buy the horse.
Yes.
Buy the horse.
Yeah. That just avoids residents from taking the brunt of the liability.
It's the last sentence in the letter that is what I have my problem with. We are asking for your consideration and approval on this as soon as possible. I am not for approving the purchase of a private resident or private concerned citizens buying a speed sign and putting it on town street. That last sentence, and if I'm asked to vote, I vote no. That's just me.
Okay, so far we have progressed the discussion a bit.
I mean,
Go ahead.
We're still in discussion.
Councilor, yeah, I'm saying, Councilor Durant, go ahead, go ahead.
The way I look at it, as we have limited resources and as this is a problem, I personally don't see the problem in a resident purchasing, like making that offer. That's my stance.
Okay. Now, I guess I have some comments too, I guess, but I want to finish all the councilors going through and then I can add mine. Go ahead, Councilor.
Well, as you probably all know, I am one of the concerned residents of Riverview Avenue. But this letter did not come from me. And as you already know, I am in favor of having a speed calming device, whether it be Riverview Avenue or any other street that we have there. We shot down the offer of one so that we could get the free one that would travel all around the community for what, 1 month?
Trailer,
Yeah,
it can be
Extended. You
but
expect,
we don't have that.
we have to negotiate it.
You know.
It's based on the
Typically,
schedule.
yeah, based on the schedule. So, we know that the traffic on Riverview Avenue is excessive. We know that, these are all facts. We know that it's there. If he wants to buy a machine, I'm in favor for sure. It takes the financial burden off of the town.
Well, here's my point. I mean, a coin has three sides. We have concerned residents, plural, because I received comments supporting this idea. We have issues of liability, exposure to liability. Definitely, if we're gonna allow a private sign to be installed on our roads, we'll get some liability about allowing that, because we are putting a private. If a donation is to be made, it has to be meet the town's criteria and becomes property of the town, right?
Correct.
Okay,
And it has to be used for someplace just other than one
Well,
particular street.
yeah, it's property of the town.
Yeah.
It's
So
property
the
of the town.
deaf sign up at, on the back street, South Street,
South
is that, does the town own that one?
Horseback riding on Manor Road, despite it being removed every year, but yes, we do.
I mean,
own
don't
the
get me
signs.
wrong, I'm not against having a speed sign. I'm not against that at all, because I do believe that speeding within the town of St. George is a problem. But there are more areas than, I'm just saying, Riverview Avenue. And when I read this letter indicates to me that the concerned residents of Riverview Avenue will buy the sign, but they will only put it on Riverview Avenue, and then it will only be there, and it'll move from one point in Riverview Avenue to another point on Riverview Avenue, unless I've lost the ability to read.
But all due respect, Council Colton, you voted no for a speed sign that could be, that could go all over for less than $20 a day.
No, I voted down for purchasing a speed sign when we can get one from RSC.
But one's not enough.
Well, this one that you want to purchase for Riverview Avenue is only gonna be one.
And
it's
plus,
only gonna
plus
be
you
on
have the
Riverview
Just want
trailer.
to say order.
Yeah, I'll shut up.
Order. No. We encourage debate. We are open democracy.
Okay, so Jason, that is a town road, but it's also a provincial road.
Correct.
So if we want to do something, it's half town and half provincial. We need some permission rights from the province too, if it's part and part.
Definitely a resident installing a sign on a provincial road would also have to meet their requirements too. So we would be able to tell a resident, yes, you can go ahead and install the sign on a provincial road, and the province comes along and says no. They're heavily restricted. I know that when Alex was here talking about things such as culling ways of slowing traffic down with bump outs and islands, that's something that would have to go through the province if we were to do that on a road like Riverview Avenue or Lateef Road. Things such as mirrors to see around corners are not allowed on provincial roads. Even flashing amber lights, like you typically will see in older roads, they're not looked at very positively. They like to have the least amount of signage, the least number of crosswalks. So there's lots of requirements there. So even if today we said, yeah, you know what, a resident can go ahead and buy a sign, we wouldn't really have the right to even say that with the provincial roads, and that's like Mount Pleasant, Lateef Road, Riverview Avenue. So it would then have to go back to them to say the yay or nay, and as heavily restricted as they are, I can't speak for them, but I can't see them approving something like that. I mean, they wouldn't want to set the precedence for all across the province where residents are going out saying, I have an issue, I'm going to buy a sign and install it myself.
Well, if I can, to move the discussion forward, in general, no one is opposing to a donation that's gonna be for a socially acceptable enhancement to our community. There are questions about standards on which both province and the town has to get involved. And I mean, I don't see a problem with someone making a donation and say it's only for the children. It will not be for the adults. It happens. So, I mean, having the donor putting some provisions on how the equipment will be used, provided that meets all the other tick marks, it is okay. But there is some discussion to be done with the town, the donor with the town, and I guess the town can coordinate the same discussion with the province, right? So for the time being, I will just believe that we don't have the information to actually move on that one, and we should actually ask Jason to actually take it on with the province. And then we can actually be able to give an answer back to the specific proposal. That's my suggestion moving forward. Do you have any concerns about this approach? Councilor?
We're liable to accept the donation.
That's right.
In other words, if that sign's put there and something happens, like Jason said, and guy gets distracted, or 2 cars come here, oh, the cameras, that was great, now we're gonna come on you folks.
We answer that. We answer that. We answer that because that sign is going to belong to the town. It's
Exactly.
going to be approved by the province. It's going to be approved by the town. It's going to be operated by the town. And the only thing that will remain from the essentially the input of the donor is of the bequest is essentially a caveat, something that will say this sign, because I paid for it, I would like to enhance my neighborhood, which is essentially the Riverview Vine. And I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with something that we're gonna own. It's gonna be up to our standards. We're gonna be responsible to use it. Okay, it's gonna meet the province. I mean, there are a lot of tick marks there. And in addition, it will actually satisfy. I mean, I'm sure that somebody has to have some discussion with Andrea or whatever to actually see, if the province is gonna get buy into it. Okay, I mean, there is something to be done, but fundamentally, I don't see any problem with it. So anyways, we need to do some more additional input, and I believe we should leave it there. Okay. Okay. So with that one matter, correspondence, by putting an action on Jason to follow up with the province and see, I mean, after find out, first of all, if the money is available, and because someone has to put some money on the table, one way or the other. And see if we can, how we can use it in a way that will actually satisfy the donors and also meet the requirements of the town and the province. Okay, moving on.